Mali says it will send a joint delegation with Burkina Faso to Niger to express their solidarity. The announcement comes a day after the generals who seized power in Niger defied an ultimatum to reinstate the elected president or face the possibility of armed intervention from other West African states. Now, this is despite the ultimatum. Members of the regional group Ecowas are divided on whether to take military action. Now, let's get analysis from Professor Christopher Isike, Professor of African Politics and International Relations, Department of Political Science at the University of Pretoria. Prof, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Let's get now the very latest in terms of developments, just in terms of the countries in the Sahel region that are, playing their allegiance to Niger, particularly Mali as well as Burkina Faso. Just your response on that show of solidarity.
Well, good afternoon, Nati. Thank you for having me. This is important to talk about because this is a crisis that is fast spreading and may engulf not just West Africa, but Central Africa and down to Southern Africa, and such the entire continent, if we don't manage this carefully. But I am not surprised that these generals are trying to align with them. It's what we refer to as putting military unity ahead of, if you like, the interest of the people that some of these military generals pretend to protect. Oftentimes when military leaders come to power, they always use bad governance and corruption, insecurity in the case of Niger to justify why they intervene in politics. But oftentimes we have found that at the end of the day, they end up worse than the governments that they replace. And you also see that they do not really solve the problems that they pretend, to solve. So that's why I am saying that I'm not so sure that this is actually in the interest of the people. In the case of Niger, for instance, if you may allow me, you'll find out that we can classify the causes of this military coup there into two categories, right? It's the immediate cause and the remote causes. The remote causes are many, and they are genuine in terms of poor governance, the external factors of France and the West generally, and the exploitative tendencies they have there, and the disillusionment that this causes amongst the people of Niger. But the immediate causes are different. If you begin to investigate that what happened there carefully, you'll find out that President Bazoum was actually planning to reform the upper echelons of the military, including the presidential guard, and to change General Abdurrahman Chani, as head of the presidential guard, and he quickly seized power. And this is historical. We found this kind of tensions between, civilian leaders and military leaders, and then the affected parties taking over power and then using, anti-government sentiments, people's disillusionment as excuse. So I'm not saying that there are no good reasons for the coup, but I'm also saying that let's look beyond the simplistic arguments that have been given, that people are using to legitimize these coups.
Yeah, and very importantly then, Prof, let's then talk about the long-standing failures of international countries, especially if you're talking about the likes of France, as well as the US, and of course also your local actors, just to address the root causes of the regional instability in the Sahel region particularly, and how what we are currently seeing now in Niger, as you've also rightfully said, is long-standing and has been in the works.
Yeah, so for me, the root causes are perverse states that we have, not just in West Africa, but the entire continent. Our states were not, established to be development machines. They were established to facilitate exploitation by the colonialists. And we inherited the states' structures and their purposes and the governance, parasitic and exploitative governance notions that they produce. We inherited them without asking ourselves whether we need these kinds of exploitative states and parasitic leadership that the colonialists had, that we have now inherited. Do we need them? We didn't have discussions about the kind of state we wanted to have, whether they be democracy, what kind of democracy, would it be social democracy, a liberal democracy, whatever. We didn't have those kinds of discussions. We simply inherited these state systems that were oppressive and carried on till date. So the result of it is what you find in these states, especially in the Francophone Africa, where the French have been very, very rapacious and parasitic. Actually, I would call evil in terms of the kinds of relationship that they have continued to have in terms of dominating the economies of most of these countries. And this is why you see a lot of ordinary people, coming out against the coup. And France has been enabled by the, if you like, nonchalant or look away attitude of other world powers like the United States and other European countries that have neglected to confront France in terms of what it was doing to the economies of these countries. So this is where they are all complicit, and all of them now, we're talking about Niger. It has vital resources, uranium, that France uses to build its own electricity in France, whereas only 70% of the people of Niger have access to electricity. I mean, at what point do you stop and become human to begin to ask whether these kinds of things are right and right to perpetuate?